Hello and welcome to another Meditation Amsterdam video. In today's video we're going to be talking about why it is so tough to create change and find purpose. I'm going to give it away from the beginning and then explain the mechanism of it. So the reason is that we create purpose, or we try to find purpose, mostly out of memory and projection. And because that is the case, we try to achieve change without, or rather by trying to escape the current reality, or in rejection to the current reality. So then let's dive into it. Over here you see the typical Meditation Amsterdam diagram, in which we have plotted the past, the future, and in the past and the future we have plotted pleasant and unpleasant situations as depicted by the green and the red little colors. And so what our mind is constantly doing is projecting itself to the past and the future. When it projects itself to a past nice situation, you could kind of call that limerence. When the situation in the past is ugly, you could call that regret, or you could call it resentment, whatever. And those projections of the past, which are based on memory, result in projections towards the future. So that these arrows go out to past and future simultaneously, and that's how you create time in your mind. So when you create that projection to the future, you could call that desire, and a nasty projection towards the future is called fear. Okay. Now, so that's what the mind is doing on a constant basis when it's untrained, right? So that it's not really living in the perceptual now, but it's living in a memory-based past, which then projects an imaginary future, which it either likes or dislikes. To a Buddhist, from a Buddhist perspective, this is a neurotic state of mind. It's a very unhealthy state of mind, because it's a constant departure from what's happening. And see, what's interesting here is this mechanism is riddled with guilt. So we're going to plot that on both sides. Guilt here and guilt here. Why is it riddled with guilt? Because there is an element of should and shouldn't that is happening all over the place. So in the case of pleasant things, there is an element of should. Yeah, this should be happening more, or it should not have stopped. And in the negative elements, there is an element of should not. It should not have happened. It should not happen in the future. Yeah. However, those should and shouldn'ts are kind of implicit. They're unconscious. So what we don't notice is that, we notice the object of desire or the object of fear, but we don't notice our own reaction to it. So these reactions of desire and fear are happening unconsciously or subconsciously. And we keep them in the subconscious because we feel guilty about them. We feel guilty about the fact that we fear certain things. So there's also guilt about the fact that we desire certain things. Meaning that this entire mechanism, although it has a neurotic flippancy between should and shouldn't, between goody and baddie, the entire thing is driven by guilt of our reactions to these things. So there's a general shouldn't, should not, that is taking place in this whole thing over here. Yeah, there is a kind of unconscious guilt and feeling that we should not be feeling in a certain way towards things that we desire or fear based on memory of the when we start to cultivate mindfulness, we start to first become aware of objects that catch our attention, either for good or bad. And then we start to become aware of our reaction to those objects, whether it's desire or fear. And then we start to become aware of the guilt that we feel about that desire or fear. In other words, most of the time we are rejecting our own reaction. And then we start to become aware that desire and object of desire are a single thing. And then we become accepting of the entire situation, which moves us into the now. Yeah. So, why is the now powerful? The now is powerful because the now is the land of is. So future imagination or past memory is riddled with should or shouldn't, but the now is the land of is, in which there is no guilt because simply things are simply the way they are, and our reaction to them is simply the way it is, right? So that's how the now and the is just encompasses everything as it is. Now, normally when we are looking for purpose and looking for change, we are in the land of should and shouldn't. In other words, our search for purpose goes along the lines of, I lack a purpose and that should not be the case. And I want to move to a green, beautiful future in which I do have purpose, and that's what should be happening. Or, I have a bad habit, which should not be the case. And I want to move to a green future in which that habit is no longer the case, or in which I am engaging in habits that should be the case, right? So we are trying to plot change and purpose, but we are trying to do so neurotically in the land of should and shouldn't, and therefore our efforts are riddled with guilt. And it's very unlikely that we're gonna succeed, therefore, in that endeavor. But there's something else as well, and I'm going to get rid of this entire little diagram now that we've explained this dynamic here, to explain why the now is a great platform for change, and coming to full grips with what is the platform for change. So take that we have the now and what is plotted here as this blue bar here. So this is what is. Yeah. Now, when we are here and our awareness is sitting on what is, then you could say that you have your foot planted on the ground of what's up, right? You have come to grips with reality as it is right here and now, and you are sitting on that. From that place, your foot can push on what is to dance with it and slightly modify it or go into a new isness in which it is once again sitting. So it's always in touch with what is. Yeah? The moment we add should and shouldn't, so I'm going to plot that green and red element here, right? So you create this neurotic shouldn't situation here. What happens is you now create distance between what is and what isn't. You create this should and shouldn't situation, should not, that guilt comes into place, and now your foot is off the ground because you are in the land of should and shouldn't, which doesn't really exist other than in your mind. And from here, you cannot make the jump to a better place. You can't make the jump because you're not in contact with the ground of is. Yeah? You are trying to make a floating jump, almost as, if you're an astronaut in space and you want to go to that end of the ship, you first need to come and have your foot land on this end of the ship so that you can push yourself to that end of the ship. Yeah? It's kind of just an analogy. I don't know. It just came to mind. So astronaut in space wants to go here to this part of the ship. That astronaut needs to come to contact. Contact needs to be established and maintained at all times so that you can propel. So if you are trying to find purpose or drive change by rejecting or hankering, it's not going to work, because it gets you off touch with what's going on. And so it's ironic, isn't it? I mean, we tend to think that by fully accepting what's going on, that we are now stuck with what's going on, but the opposite is the case. That gives you leverage, because you have contact with reality, and then you can dance with it, try to manipulate it, and try to find your way around it with that contact. Our mind tends to believe that by creating mental scenarios, that will create the change. But here you have no leverage. There's no way to create change from here, and there's no way to create purpose from here. Spoiler alert, the purpose that your mind is trying to create in these green scenarios or whatever is not to be found there. Purpose is to be found here, in that very coming in contact with what is. That's where purpose sits. Your purpose is to come in contact with the ground of what is. That ground of what is it made of? It's made of awareness of sensory perception. We've said this before, you are trying to go away from a conceptual life and you are moving to a perceptual life. That's where purpose is to be found, and meaning. This has inherent meaning, right? The more you perceive, the more meaning and purpose you find. So, well, that's it essentially. That's what this video was aiming to explain. Is in trying to find meaning or drive change or find purpose, you cannot do so by hankering for a fluffy future which you can never quite grasp. We were talking with a friend about this in the weekend. She says, I want to find this amazing purpose, but I don't know what it is. I have news for you. You never will know what it is, because you are trying to project this fluffy, better future that is a mental projection, whereas purpose is found in finally landing in the now, right? That's where it sits. And again, the other trap is this idea that by having a rejection of what is like, oh, this is unacceptable, this habit is not acceptable, not having a purpose, or not having this, not having that is unacceptable, this should not be the case. You have added the element of should and shouldn't, which disconnects you from what is. Yeah, and that's the trap. The mind believes that it can project itself into a better future and therefore find it, whereas in reality, what you need to do is to stop projecting, come to full grips with the tangibility and the sensory isness of the now, and there you find purpose, inherent purpose, and from there you can find also potentially better content, or to dance better with the pleasant and unpleasant situations of the now. So I hope that helps, and I'll be back with more as usual. Cheerio.